to welcome the two Gruen. We'll meet our panel in a moment, but first, the other day when I was glued to the ABC, as I always am, and totally not watching The Bachelorette, I saw this hair commercial.
I'm not a blonde. I'm not a brunette. I'm a blonde.
Blonde. Hey, L'Oreal, we already have a name for that colour. It's light brown. Pretty it's blonde, get it? Because they combined brown and blonde. I guess it's better than combining blonde and brown and getting blown. Or blown. Oh. Oh, that's better. There's a slogan for L'Oreal. Get blown. Because you're worth it. L'Oreal knows that to flog hair care products, you need a spokesperson who is famous, charismatic and has great hair. But that doesn't always work out, as this real shampoo ad from Turkey shows.
Kadın elbisesi giymiyorsan kadın şampuanı da kullanma. Artık %100 erkek şampuanı Biomen var.
What brickhead thought that was a good idea? Gives a whole new meaning to hair furor. Hair furor. That's a great joke. Not surprisingly, that ad was withdrawn after complaints from Turkey's Jewish community. Carlsberg made a more successful pitch to men recently when they launched a range of grooming products made with beer.
First time I heard we were supposed to make a beauty series for men, I thought it was a joke.
No, you get your six-pack on one hand with the Carlsberg and you get your six-pack as a shampoo. Why not?
Why not? I'm going to get them confused and drink a six-pack of shampoo. And then I'll have to drink a six-pack of conditioner to wash it down. Talk about hair of the dog. But no one sells shampoo to blokes quite like Dove Brazil.
Ô, Diego. Oi. Você fez alguma coisa no cabelo? É que ele tá com um efeito de comercial de shampoo de mulher. Como você... Sério? Deve ser o shampoo que você tá usando.
Sexy and free.
Shampoo feminino não foi feito para isso.
Whatever you think of that ad, his hair was a lovely shade of blonde. Time to welcome our panel from Network 10, Russell Howcroft, and from Leo Burnett, Todd Sampson.
Yep.
They're joined by self-described marketing bloke Toby Ralph, and from One Green Bean, Claire Salvetti. If you want to understand a brand, talk to the customers.
It was so really cool. Yeah, we got to touch him and stuff, and it was
to shake his hand. It was really awesome.
Yeah.
It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. It felt great. It was amazing.
Those crazed fans weren't for One Direction or Justin Bieber. No, they were welcoming Pope Francis to America last week. They weren't believers, they were believers. From the moment Francis arrived in Washington, there was more messaging than the Da Vinci Code. He landed on a Pope-branded Alitalia plane, greeted dignitaries, blessed kids, and was whisked away in this.
The Fiat, flanked by a legion of SUVs, wound its way towards Washington. Onlookers lined the route, waving at Pope Francis, welcoming him to America.
Oh, Mr. Bean goes to the USA. Fiat, Alitalia, both Italian companies. Russell, what would the deal be between these companies and the Pope?
Well, don't you love it, Will, that even the Pope is a vehicle for brands? Yeah, and even it is pretty amazing. And even the Pope can be a vehicle for awesome Italian brands. I mean, this is where he gets lucky because, of course, he lives in the Vatican, despite the fact he's Argentinian, and he can hang out with these brilliant brands like Fiat and Alitalia, and in effect, he becomes a global spokesperson for those brands. And, of course, those brands are then going to have an amazing commercial rub-off effect. I don't know what the deal is, if you like, between the Vatican and the Italian government, but, of course, there is, if you like, some sort of deal whereby when he travels and the kit that he uses, it should be Italian kit. It's just like the royal family in Britain, when they travel and the stuff they use is British, because they become, if you like, the highest spokesperson of all for industry in those countries.
I don't think the relationship between those brands would be directly with the Pope. I think it would be with the Vatican. Because if you break down, like, I mean, Catholicism may be inspired by God, but it's marketed exactly the same as every other brand on the planet. So the Pope is the brand ambassador for Catholicism, and you've got the, you know, the churches are the distribution, and the client is the Vatican, and the Bible is basically the guidelines, the brand guidelines. And so I think the relationship would be with the Vatican, and the reason that would be an Italian one is, as we know, the Vatican is incredibly powerful. In fact, they own up to 40% of Rome. So I could see them having plenty of influence over what car he drives.
You know, the Catholic Church is a far bigger brand than Fiat. It's got more assets than Apple. It's got better distribution than McDonald's. It's got more customers than the biggest 10 banks put together. Their core product costs nothing to make. And, and when they make a profit, they pay a tax rate that would make Google jealous.
Fiat got plenty of free coverage.
What would Jesus drive?
I love the Fiat. Driving in that Fiat.
And more about that Fiat.
No fancy limousine. That is a Fiat.
For this town, that is a very humble car.
They also capitalised on the moment with this tweet. His Holiness knows how to make an entrance, which was then swiftly deleted. Thou shalt not gloat. Claire, are there risks for brands trying to cash in on the Pope?
Yeah, there are huge risks. I mean, the Pope is a spiritual and a religious icon. His mission is to serve people and help the poor. And that's about as far removed as you can get from marketing and consumerism. So you have to be careful. I mean, Fiat is interesting because they had an amazing opportunity to be associated with the Pope by driving him off the tarmac. Awesome. But then they went and tweeted, and it takes it from a wonderful association to a blatant marketing plug, and that's where it gets a bit icky.
What about the fact that it was a tiny little Fiat? Because, I mean, obviously Fiat have, like, much bigger and better cars than that. Was that an obvious choice, do you think, Toby?
Yeah, again, I mean, if you think of the Vatican, they own a bank, they own property trusts, they own massive share portfolios, they own hospitals and universities and schools, and all. They're very, very wealthy, more wealthy than any corporation. So, and they preach austerity and humility, and it's against their core brand values. So to have a Pope who's a little parsimonious is finally showing that they practice what they preach.
It's also about sending a signal. So the little Fiat, it's about sending a signal back into the bureaucracy, if you like, of the Vatican. So, of course, the bureaucracy has been used to lots of trinkets, lots of toys and lots of stretch limousines. And so it is a bit of a flip that's going on here. And it's actually an advertisement to the inner workings of the Vatican on what is, if you like, hopefully the new method.
I mean, it's brilliant, that vision of him just driving off in that tiny...
Superb.
It looks like a clown car. You imagine that when he gets out the other end, like 18 other popes will get out. Did I say cashing in? Check out this. It's the official US Tour Pope bobblehead. You play with it while wearing your official Pope T-shirt. Can't believe Todd's not wearing one. Drink from your official Pope coffee cup and admiring your official Pope medallion, all of which you brought home in your official Pope tote bag, which you got at the official Pope-Up store. There was also bootleg merchandise on sale too, from Pope corn to the Pope toaster, which burns the image of the Pope into your breakfast. The Father, the Bun, the Holy Toast. All All this for a pope who rails against corporate greed. Todd, does that matter?
Yeah, there's a bit of an irony here because the global church, Catholic Church, is a massive business. It is a big, big corporation. And their biggest customer are American Catholics. They give upwards of 150 million per week into the collection basket. So it's been declining in America. So this whole focus of celebritydom and all the merchandise and everything is fitting the Pope back into American culture. And in that way, we know what's happening, the Francis effect. You know, people attending church now up 20% in America.
It is great fun to have the toaster, you know, and
That's the best bit.
you know, and spread the love was the line. I think there's an awesome line, and it's just people sort of putting energy into it. Yeah, they're trying to get a commercial gain off it, but it's just showing, as Todd says, it's just driving into the culture, enjoying it, putting energy into it. Oh, I love it all.
The other thing with the church, did you say you love it all?
I do.
By the way, these bobbleheads are awesome.
Yeah.
I'm not meant to endorse anything, but we got one for the office, and it's so much fun to just make his head go and go, "Can I masturbate?" And he's like... While in the US, the Pope hung at the White House, canonised a saint, addressed Congress and the UN, dropped in on a Harlem school, held mass at Madison Square Garden, and visited a jail. He's handing him cigarettes. Toby, it's amazing to say this, but you once helped organise a papal tour.
I did.
How do you choose the events?
I don't. That's decided by a bunch of bishops in Italy.
So you don't, when you're organising the tour, you don't get any control over these opportunities?
You don't control that. What you do, I mean, you can't say, "Look, mate, I've got your spot on Q&A" or anything like that. He's not a normal client.
I mean, people would be brave to tweet "Burns on the Pope."
But what you do is, basically, everyone wants to see him. You try and maximise media access to him without compromising security. And then you manage the photo ops in terms of when he appears, you want a black person, a yellow person, a white person, an old person, a young person, a couple of babies, and chuck in an ecstatic nun. You want the, you want the photos to look good, and that's what you do on a papal tour at a local level.
I just love how evil you are. How did you work with the Pope? You must have been like the devil on the shoulder.
I was sponsored by a beer company to do it. It was fantastic. They brought out an in-house brand called the Vatican.
The Fiat was another symbol of the Pope's frugality. Within weeks of being elected in 2013, Francis replaced the golden papal chair with a wooden one. Probably got it at IKEA. Caught the bus, carried his own luggage, moved into the workers' residence at the Vatican and washed the feet of prisoners. He also insisted on dressing differently. The previous Pope wore custom-made red kangaroo leather shoes, but this Pope is only ever seen in black lace-ups. Pope Francis is so humble, he apparently even shops at Coles. Claire, what's the value in appearing thrifty?
Thrifty. Well, here you can see that actions speak louder than words. And Pope Francis is extremely thrifty. You can see it in so many different ways. He drives a Ford Focus around his hometown in Rome. He then puts a kicked-up pair of shoes on and comes to the US. And what it means is he's essentially showing us his values through what he wears. And that is a life of simplicity and being really, really humble. But the really interesting thing about being thrifty is that for years, the Catholic Church has struggled with a negative reputation. All of a sudden, this new guy's come along. He's doing the smallest, tiniest actions in wearing a different pair of shoes, and he's making amazing global headlines.
Yeah.
It's incredible for the Catholic Church, what he's doing.
It's important to recognise that he was elected. So, you know, his peers have chosen that that was the right cat at the right time. So it's, yes, he has got an amazing, you know, his brand, if you like, is incredible. But the church has decided that this is the appropriate time to have that person.
But by the way, did you just describe electing a pope as finding the right cat at the right time?
I did. And you know what?
Who's gonna be our cat in the hat?
And I reckon he is the right cat at the right time.
Behind every great man is an even better PR machine. In 2013, the Vatican hired consulting firm McKinsey to look after its communications and took on former Fox News correspondent Greg Burke as a senior PR advisor. Todd, how do we tell where the Pope ends and the PR starts?
I think they're one and the same. in terms of his role as a brand ambassador. So the best way to increase the sale of a product, in this case, Catholicism, is to improve the product. The second best way is to improve the seller. And he is an improved seller. And he hasn't, the genius of what they've done, I think the Vatican has pulled off a PR stroke of genius. He hasn't changed anything. He's only talked about change. So he's basically changed the wrapping, and the conversion rates are going up, and the people's support is going up without actually changing the product itself.
But that PR guy, I mean, what an amazing job. He's come in, he gets to work with Pope Francis, and the reason that Pope Francis is so good at what he does is because he's authentic, he is his own brand, he is newsworthy, he's got a new point of view, and he's extremely relevant. He's capturing audiences that no other Pope has done before, like the US Congress.
You know, an important variable that we measure is the notion of esteem. So in brands, so is that brand held in high esteem? And it's actually very, very difficult to be held in a high esteem. So this cat here clearly is held in very high esteem. And if that keeps going, you know, there is going to be this fantastic change that happens as a result, because highly esteemed brands actually do generate behaviour change.
Pope Francis isn't just the humble Pope. He's the cool Pope, the digital Pope. He tweets. He has his own emojis. He takes selfies. Hashtag actually blessed. He's a Facebook-like in human form. He even blessed bikies and had pizza delivered straight to his Pope-mobile. He really likes to get out among his followers, like this moment.
Landing in Philadelphia, Francis unexpectedly stopped his motorcade and got out of his Fiat when he spotted a 10-year-old boy in a wheelchair. He kissed and blessed Michael Keating.
Toby, when the Pope goes off script like that, how freaked out would the handlers be?
Completely. Minders liaise with the Secret Service or protective services here, and they're very, very good, but they can't protect against every moody loner with a gun, particularly in America, where there's as many guns as people. And if the Pope gets assassinated on your watch, you can forget that promotion.
Oops, we're cool though, right? But these are still not controllable situations. The minute you go out in public, the minute you accept a pizza from a stranger, you can't control what's going to happen next. Claire, you work in this, like, if you're working with someone in a PR sense, would that scare you?
Yes.
Right.
It's absolutely. You don't know what is going to happen, and you have to prepare for everything. And the interesting thing about the Pope is that clearly he feels he has God looking over him. Not everyone feels like that. So he's removed the bulletproof glass from his Pope-mobile. But what that means for his people around him is that they have to constantly be looking to see if that might impact him in any way. It would be a really tough job.
And of course, doing something like he did there only builds brand Pope Francis, and it just makes him even more loved. And, you know, the image of the girl behind, you know, taking the photograph, I mean, that is as powerful as the blessing that he's doing. It's pretty awesome stuff.
Because sometimes the best PR is the stuff that goes viral is the unscripted stuff. And that moment was, I think, possibly the most beautiful moment of his tour.
Everyone knows the church has had its problems, most notably with child sexual abuse. This Pope has made progressive remarks on issues such as divorce, immigration, abortion, homosexuality and climate change. In the US, some have reacted to his remarks like this.
The Pope is saying we have to give and give and give, the rich. We have to give and give and give until we're all poor. This is just pure Marxism coming out of the mouth of the Pope. There's no such unfettered capitalism that doesn't exist anywhere.
He talks about the horror of capitalism. He's anti-trickle-down economics. He supports the Iranian deal.
His job is to get souls into heaven, period. His job is not to tell governments how to spend money.
Yeah. Remember when Jesus fed the masses with the miracle of trickle-down economics? The Pope is about poverty. The Vatican has its own bank. The Pope is a brand and the church is a brand. Toby, what happens if those brands collide?
A conflict like that can't last. It needs to be resolved. New leaders get a honeymoon period, and they very often challenge the orthodoxy during that time. I mean, if you think of Malcolm Turnbull now and the Pope, they're doing very similar things. They're seeming more liberal, small L liberal, on same-sex marriage, on climate change and all those issues, and people love them for it. However, long-term, if there's no substantial change, the brand will suffer market share loss and the leader will get turfed out.
Interesting. But if you really want to effectively lead your flock, there's only one question you should ask yourself. What would Donald do? What would the Republican reality TV relic do? Well, he'd do what he did in 2010 and get chatty with his own flock in this bizarre commercial for a brand nobody was asking for, Trump mattresses.
So what do you think of my Trump Home mattress collection by Serta? Finally, the same luxury and comfort I demand in my hotels.
Oh, they'll never count sheep again.
Listen, why don't you come work for me?
What do you have in mind?
Something you were born to do.
Welcome to room 9.
Looking good, number 9, looking good.
Where's your dignity?
Just a reminder, the man talking to the sheep is running for president. It's where we tackle difficult real-world briefs, and briefs don't come more difficult than this. In the past 5 years, Australia's had 5 prime ministers. That's more prime ministers than real women on Ashley Madison. So this week, we've turned to the next generation. The Young Bloods are a national body for advertising hotshots under 30. And we've asked them to come up with a campaign to restore our faith in politicians. Can they do it? Please welcome from Queensland, Harry McEwen, and from WA, Lucy Stolwinder. Welcome. Harry, how did you run your campaign?
We wanted to give a voice to the good politicians that do great work every day.
Let's have a look.
I like to think I'm a regular kind of guy.
I work long hours.